and so I had to create another person to cast doubt on the whole thing.
Now, do you find that your suggestions coming from your editor are valid?
Oh, most certainly. Yes, they really are. In the first book, there was a scene where the protagonist, she barges in and somebody's got a gun and she somehow manages, to escape that situation. And the editor came back and said, this protagonist is too dumb to live. I don't even care about her anymore the minute that happened. Why did she barge into this as a situation where she knew darn well it was going to be too dangerous? So again, rewrite. But yes, the advice. I'm in the hands of some very capable editors and cover designers and so on and so forth. So that's their business. I just write the stories.
Right. Well, that's great that you have a great deal of respect for the editor and that their suggestions are good ones, that they improve the book.
Yes.
And that's to your advantage. Do you enjoy reading other kinds of books, other genres, when you are writing a book, or do you avoid reading other things and just focus on the book at hand that you're trying to write?
Oh, that is such a great question. That is a wonderful question, Harriet. Oddly, maybe, I prefer to read literature, not mystery fiction. And so what happens to me is if I'm reading something and, like, for example, the one I just finished is called Educated by Tara Westover. Yeah. And I'm not sure I would put that in the category of high literature, but it was a great book and I enjoyed it, but it's not a mystery. It's a nonfiction memoir. Mm-hmm. And when I got into a workshop with my writer people and submitted something for them to look at with my current project, they said, "What has happened to your voice? This is what are you reading right now? Because this is really messing you up." You've got to put that down. So I try to separate my mystery reading for fun, if you will, from my preferred reading list. And so, yes, one will interfere with the other. I have to remain true to the voice of my characters. I'll tell you, there are some mystery writers that I highly respect. One of them is Paul Levine, who's partially retired now. He's a Florida guy who's relocated to California. Another one is Michael Connolly, a great mystery writer. He writes the Bosch series of books, and now I think Netflix is running a series based on his books. So I love reading them when they're done well, but my preferred reading is not necessarily mystery novels.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you have a favorite author right now, or favorite book that you're reading at the moment?
Well, right before Educated, I just finished American Dirt by Jeannie Cummings, I think was the author. Mm-hmm. That is a novel. It's not nonfiction. Again, a very, very good book. There was, I don't know. I mean, I read whatever hits the New York Times bestsellers list or wins a Pulitzer Prize. Those are my sort of tried and true faves. Yeah.
That's great. Now, you had mentioned to me that you incorporate social issues into your books. Why is that important to you?
Well, if I have a voice, which I do, I'm not a best-selling novelist, but I think, I'm fortunate enough to have a voice that, reaches people that I might not otherwise reach. And so I would be really wrong not to incorporate social issues that are near and dear to me. So in the first book that I wrote, in Wrongful Conviction, racial bias, which is a reason for wrongful conviction, but even, in our everyday lives, racial bias exists. And it makes me crazy. It truly makes me crazy. I've got a few friends who are writers who are also happen to be African Americans, and I'm just appalled by the life they have to read, the things they have had to say to their children as they grew up, that being white and living in really a charmed existence, I never had to even think about it. So racial bias is a subject that I hope I shed some light on that in my first book. In the second book, human trafficking is first and foremost. There is too much of it. It is definitely taking advantage of people coming into the country who, for reasons of, that we can't even imagine the situation these people are coming from, to risk everything to come here, only to land here and be really taken advantage of. And in South Florida, where I live, it is something that is in front of all of us, and yet nobody sees it really. Especially, I would say, in my second book, I highlighted the tomato fields of Immokalee, Florida. Immokalee is only minutes away from some of the most wealthy parts of the Florida West Coast. And here, people are really enslaved to the business of raising and harvesting tomatoes. And so that, that's the setting that I used for my second book. Book 3, I'm trying to keep my books straight now. Mm-hmm. In book three, illegal immigration. And that's similar to human trafficking, except that, they're definitely distinctive. They're distinctively different. And also in book 3, homelessness. Mm. And again, shockingly, I live in a wonderful, beautiful, affluent community. And yet homelessness is a large and growing problem. And together with homelessness there's a very strong correlation with homelessness and mental health. So again, I've incorporated that. Great. There's a character who is homeless and suffers from schizophrenia, in and out of social shelters, just doesn't have a chance. So that's my short list of social issues that are near and dear to me.
Well, that's great, because you raise awareness then not only about wrongful conviction and innocent people sitting behind bars, but some of these issues too that go hand in hand. And I thank you for that, because those are certainly near and dear to my heart as well, as you know.
Yes.
Well, I wanted before we close today to recommend something I just learned about that will be on Netflix. It is a series, and I believe it's either called Innocence Cases or Innocence Files, and I believe there will be 9 cases of innocence, and the man doing the series has done death row stories. He's done a number of documentaries before. He's just terrific. So check Netflix for this. And also, I wanted to recommend John Grisham's new book that I'm reading called The Guardians, also highlighting cases of innocence behind bars. So there are some things out there that are definitely worth watching and reading. And there's no shortage of that. And your books certainly are part of it. And it was wonderful to have you as a guest today on the podcast, Janet. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Harriet. And again, I can't say enough to you. Thank you for all the good work that you do with the Innocence Project of Florida.
Well, thank you for the compliment. I appreciate that. So once again, I want to remind my listeners, if you have some thoughts on today's podcast or any other that we have done, please email me at pursuing.justice5@gmail.com. And my next podcast, I will have a series with a woman from California named Amy Friedman, who has put together an after-school club for high school students in California, and she's trying to get it across the nation in as many schools as possible. High schoolers that have a loved one behind bars, whether it's a parent, a sibling, or a relative. And it's a place for these kids to be able to understand each other, and there's no need to hide that fact in their lives. And I will have her, Amy Friedman, who founded the club. It's called POPS, Pain of the Prison System, and some of her students who are in the club. So that should be very, very interesting next time. So thank you all for listening. Thank you again, Janet, for being with me today. And I hope people will keep listening to Pursuing Justice, and stay safe and stay well.